Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hey Joe, What You Know. Delighted we've got Lewis Steele with me, who's a football reporter for the Daily Mail sports digital team, and Lewis covers the Merseyside patch. And Lewis, you've had a pretty busy last couple of months, haven't you? Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for having me on for starters. Always a pleasure. Yeah, it's been mad the last few months, as I was saying before we came on. There's never a dull day covering Liverpool. And sometimes if I think I may have a day off or a quiet day coming, something will just come from nowhere. I've filed stories from some strange places in the last few months when I thought I've been meant to be on a day off. But yeah, last couple of months with Liverpool signing however many players, 450 nearly £1 million. It's been hectic to say the least, but all good fun.
Yeah, it has been a massive transfer window for Liverpool. You said you've been with the Mail for about 6 years now, and then you've been doing the Liverpool patch for the last two. Um,
Mm.
in terms of the sort of, I'm guessing that was general sport, was it initially, and then going over to more was predominantly football, I suppose now, isn't it? And then
Yeah,
obviously with Liverpool and the massive fan base that we've got, it's you've got people at you all the time.
yeah. Yeah, there's always people DMing me and tweeting me, mostly nice things, but some not so nice things. But I do, take things on the chin quite well. If they're not so nice, I normally just see the funny side. But yeah, I started doing a bit of sub editing and being a bit of a jack of all trades in the office, doing a bit of news editing and that sort of thing, while going to random games on a Saturday or a Tuesday night, whatever. And that just tended to be your mid-table Premier League games, I would say, like Brighton v Wolves, Fulham v Bournemouth, these sorts of games, which was good fun going to all different stadiums and writing features. Did a bit of championship matches as well, um, and a bit of tennis in the summer at Wimbledon, Queens, places like this, and then got the call to go up to Liverpool. And when you get offered to cover a club as big as Liverpool every day, it's hard to say no. So I said yes, and been working that for 2 years now. And it's been, as I said at the start, never a quiet day. It's been hectic. Never have a chance to think, right, let's have a calm period because there's always stuff happening. And with so many fans, they always want to know things. You want to know who the next player to sign is. You want to know how this kid's doing in the academy. So you have to be across a lot of things. A lot of people say, well, you only cover one club, it must be easy, but it's such a big club. There's so many things going on at any given time. But as I say, it's very good fun.
So with obviously the sort of transition from Klopp to Slot as a reporter, how's that been for you over the last year and a half?
Yeah, it's been when Klopp resigned, I thought, well, that was in itself one of the biggest stories I've ever worked on. And then the whole hiring of Arne Slot. But I think in terms of on a personal level, the fact that I was still relatively new on the patch when Slot came in, it was actually good for me because it meant that the other reporters in the room may have all had relationships with Jurgen that I obviously wouldn't have because they've known him for 9 years. I'd only known him for one. So it was good with Arne in terms of getting in front of him early. Went out to Rotterdam, spoke to him there, and went out to the pre-season tour and had a bit more time with him there. So I think that helped me personally. And Slot is really good to deal with. He never goes off the record, whereas Klopp would pretty much every week. Um, Slot likes to keep everything on the record, but someone told me that he finds the questions that us guys ask him a lot easier in from the English media than he would the Dutch media back in the day. So I need to pull my finger out a bit, ask him some tricky questions. But if you ask him anything about tactics, he loves it and he'll go off and 10-minute talk about something tactical. But he's a very nice chap. He has a lot of time for us guys, and you can see why the players buy into his style as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting. And to go touch on the transfer window, and I suppose one of the biggest stories that you were involved with and covered a lot was the Florian Wirtz signing, and you went over to Munich and covered the
Mm.
Germany game and spoke to contacts over there. When you're covering stories like that, and you've got obviously we'll come on to a bit later on maybe, but you've got other sort of sports reporters who are well known. How do you sort of get the inside track, and how do you make yourself and your reporting slightly different or ahead of the game as opposed to someone like Fabrizio Romano or Ornstein, for example?
Yeah, I think there's always with me personally and maybe other journalists similar age, you have to stand out from the crowd because there's so many people these days, and you sort of have to concede defeat on a few things. For example, Fabrizio's got 25 million followers, so I'm never going to compete with him in terms of engagement. And David Ornstein has got 20 years experience on me and, a million more contacts than me. So he's going to get more stories than me. So I have to think maybe if I'm not breaking the initial exclusive that Wirtz to Liverpool is on, how do I go beyond that and say this is why Liverpool want Florian Wirtz? This is why Florian Wirtz would fit in at Liverpool. Just, ask
Yeah.
ask yourself all these questions that the readers, listeners, viewers, Liverpool fans, the non-Liverpool fans would want to know, and try and answer as many questions as you can. Bring more details to the story, whereas they might say Liverpool want Florian Wirtz. I can try and find out how much they want him, what lengths are going to go to get him, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's different. I try and be multi-platform in terms of doing videos as well as just articles. Um, Try and be more modern facing as a journalist, whereas some, and no disrespect to them at all, but they have got used to just writing for the paper, whereas I try and be more rounded, which takes a lot more work. So it's there's never a quiet day. But yeah, as I keep saying, it's all good fun.
Yeah, well, I think I was glued to your sort of updates when the Bert saga was going on. I thought they were excellent, and having that insight because I watched Bundesliga, but a lot of Liverpool fans, a lot of Liverpool supporters won't have known too much about Verts apart from maybe the YouTube compilations that will just sort of pop up in and around those sort of times when rumors are circulating. But when you
Mm.
were over in Germany. Who are you sort of speaking to, and who are you getting the information about? Was it coaches? I know you spoke to some fans. Was it other reporters in Germany? How did you sort of gather those contacts and then get you know it would then inform you and your reporting?
Yeah, I would say with that one, I'm just trying to remember. I reached out to a few of the local Leverkusen reporters as my first port of call. And I think that's quite common practice in journalism that journalists will use each other to help each other. So, I've used that with a few sagas this summer, but they could give me information about Florian and the background information that I wouldn't know already in terms of anecdotes about what he's like, which could feed into a sort of longer read about him. And they can also give me sort of contacts in terms of here's his first coach or here's his first um, physio at Leverkusen who would have, given massages every day and spoke to him for an hour a day, so knows a lot about him. Now, they don't always talk on the record, so you can talk to them off the record and just use it as just information, or you can use it as quotes if they want to talk on the record. Um, I also spoke to fans outside the ground to get to understand what the Germans thought of him. And most of them said good things, although maybe I was a bit selective and I only chose people that had Wirtz on the back of the shirt.
You knew your
Um,
targets, right?
Um, but yeah, so that's how I would go about it, and then you end up getting introduced to people left, right, and centre. Wirtz is a bit different because his agent is his dad, um, whereas, for example, with Just trying to think like Frimpong, for example, his agent is someone different and he's got like two or three different agents. So, I managed to somehow get all of their numbers and just try and talk to them. And then you can talk to people in Leverkusen again, same club, of course. Um, so people in those sagas that really helped. And then in return, they would come to me and say, "What do you know about Jarell Kwanzaa?" So it works both ways, and it's a nice way of working.
Yeah, definitely. So you've got a transfer. I suppose it was a fairly straightforward transfer for Bert in the end, as opposed to Isak at Liverpool. Had to wait till the final day with getting him over the line. When you've got a transfer like Isak going on, is it frustrating because looking at X from sort of a neutral perspective and getting updates from that all the time, um, and you've got people saying, "Oh, certain journalists are getting briefed by this, others are getting briefed by that." When they're saying those sort of things, what does that mean? And is it just a case of um, how are you sort of staying neutral in that respect? There was a couple of Newcastle journalists who were, some of them were definitely really pro Newcastle.
Yeah, so you have to, and this is a case for every story you work on in football, I would say. You have to work out that every deal has a lot of stakeholders involved in terms of both clubs, but also the agent and the family and the fan bases even of both clubs and the player himself. And with the Isak saga, you've got, and I think I said in a video, there's the Newcastle side of the story, there's the Liverpool side of the story, and then you have to think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. So Newcastle are saying we're not going to sell him for less than 150, and Liverpool are briefing, um, we're not going to go back into him after the first bid. And you have to sort of ask yourself, is that true? And maybe I would never write a story to say something's not going to happen, basically, because you're just opening yourself up to failure, if you know what I mean, in terms of things can change all the time. So Newcastle can say they're not going to sell him, but it was almost like if you're saying that, it makes you doubt whether it's actually true. It was a bit of a strange scenario, and the same with Liverpool. And like yesterday, I've seen reports saying they're not going to buy Mark Gahey in January, and there was a lot 2 or 3 days left of this transfer window where they were apparently saying we're not going to be expecting any more signings. So you have to just try and ask yourself, what do they achieve from this? Um, and a lot of people do say that they brief it, but normally it is a case of you going to them and asking for the latest, and they just answer. It's not that they come out of nowhere and ring you up and say, by the way, we're not going to be signing this player. So it is hard because there's a lot of people saying different things and they all have different vested interest. Isak's agent could be going around, saying this and that, and you have to just try and think what's actually right. Because when Liverpool was saying they're definitely not going to sign him, I was hearing from other sources that they were going to have another go. So I'm just like, right, well, I'm just going to leave that for now. So it's actually quite tricky to a lot of people view football journalists as, just sort of just waiting around for someone to call you. But for every bit of detail or story, there's normally a lot of text and phone calls and emails or whatever that go into it. And for every story you write, there's probably three or four that you don't write because you couldn't quite corroborate the information. So yeah, I would say it's hard to balance is the best way of putting it.
Yeah, sure. You've got to make sure you've got your sources backed up as well, of course.
Yeah.
It's really reliable. And then obviously on Mark Gay, because that was disappointing from a Liverpool perspective not to get him over the line. Do you think they'll go back in for him?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I would be surprised if he's not a Liverpool player this time next year. Um, And it would be a shame for him personally if that was the case because he had signed everything. He was, for all intents and purposes, at 3 or 4 p.m. this time last week, he was a Liverpool player. So I felt a bit sorry for him in a way. I know people will say, well, he's still earning, however many thousands a week, but this was his dream move, and he could miss out on a Premier League title, Champions League, who knows what else. But I do think there is an understanding that Liverpool will return to the table for Gahey. It seems more likely that that will be next summer, but I wouldn't 100% rule out January because, for example, one of the current defenders could, break the leg and be out for the season, and then they'd have to act. So, yeah, I think they will go back in for him, and I think that would be a good move for all parties, apart
Yeah,
from Crystal Palace, who've lost out on a lot of money.
yeah. Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, yeah, like you say, Gay, he's obviously, and because he played, didn't he, right up to the end of the track, the last point essentially for Palace in that transfer window, if you want to like cut it off as a block. So in his mind, it is mentally sort of checked into the fact I'm going to Liverpool now. I've had a great time at Palace. I'm going to leave on a high. Scored a fantastic goal the night before against Villa away, and then he's done all the medical and everything, and then it's you know I don't obviously we're not privy to conversations between Glasner and Parish, but it sounds like there's been some sort of you know ultimatum from the manager, and I'd imagine Parish was probably long-term planning in a way with some of the funding that they were going to get for Gahey, but yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, it is a shame for everyone. I think Parish and Parish is someone that I'd probably feel a bit sorry for in as well because he was basically put in a position of sell his captain and probably force the manager to be on the brink of quitting in that scenario or lose out on 35 million. So it was a bit of a lose-lose for Parish on deadline day. Um, so let's see what happens in the next 6 to 12 months on Gahey, but I do think it'll end up at Liverpool in the future.
Just in terms of like, you know, you going up against not going up because you don't work directly against each other, but some of the other journalists who all of the fans are sort of following and stuff on X, and then you've got someone who comes out with a woodwork in the Kyler, for example. I know you've had quite a few tweets back and forth, and some suggesting that you were working with them as a joke. Um, that account's obviously had quite a rise over the last couple of years, hasn't it? Going
Yeah,
up and sort of just posting rumours and now being you know maybe breaking a couple of stories themselves. Do you know who are behind it? And if you do, what are they like? And what are they like as people? And to sort of have a relationship with that in a professional capacity as well.
yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly who they are. All that I know is apparently I know them personally, so that doesn't help in terms of I've had a few messages with Indy on Twitter DM,
Yeah.
and he seems a nice guy. But it's weird when you don't actually know who you're speaking to. Um, it's a bit like in some of these, spy movies where they're talking to, just a computer, but you don't know who's at the other end of the line. Um, but the person who was replying insists that they are someone that I know personally, so I have no idea. The intrigue is good, and I think that is what actually helps the account grow is that people are intrigued by it because at this stage, people are still a bit unsure whether they're actually legit or whether they're just had a really good look in the transfer window. But as far as I'm aware, they were bought out and or they're certainly different ownership or different people helping. There's different people involved, is what I'd say, than there was originally. Because I've known that account from since I started using Twitter, when I was over 10 years ago. So it's been around forever, but now it does have a bit of credibility, or a lot of credibility, I should say, this summer. Um, so it'll be interesting to see whether they go from strength to strength or whether they do just fade away. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, they're run by some pro journalists, and the guy I've spoken to seems a nice chap. So
Interesting. And in terms of the other, do you have any relationship with the other sort of big hitters as well as yourself, like Ornstein or um, Fabrizio Romano? Have you ever sort of chatted to those guys before?
I've spoke to him, but I wouldn't particularly say that we are, speaking all the time or whatever. I think I'm a bit too small fry for them still at this stage. But speak to obviously the guys who cover Liverpool all the time, and
Yeah.
I speak to them on a probably daily basis. The likes of Paul, Joyce, James Pearce, people who I respect very much. Paul Gorst, Ian Doyle. Probably some more people that I'm missing, but Joycey and James are the big hitters. They've been doing this job since I was about 2 feet high, and um, which I like to wind them up about that. But yeah, they've helped me a lot, whether directly or indirectly, just in terms of watching the way they go about their work. So speak to them guys quite a lot, and yeah, it's good fun. Especially when we're on the European away trips together, get to spend a bit of time with them, kill a few hours having lunch on the day of the game and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a good patch. I remember I did my journalism training at Radio City, so
Nice.
I was able to learn off like Peter McDowell and
Yeah.
people like that back in the day. That's quite a long time ago now. But no, yeah, obviously you've been on the Anfield Wrap, Redmen TV, all of the sort of big Liverpool fan sites, which to be fair, are pretty damn good, aren't they? If you're looking across the board at fan channels,
They
what
are
your
really
interactions
good.
have been like?
Yeah, they're all nice. The people I've dealt with at both Redmen and the Anfield Wrap, and some of the other channels as well, they're all really good. They're really nice people, really easy to deal with, quite informal, laid back sort of people that, I've been on some podcasts before where it's felt a bit, I don't know, corporate-y, where these is quite a laid back. I think that's what appeals to the fans really. Anfield Wrap, obviously, and Redmen have got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and credit to them guys for the work that they put in every single day. Spend a bit more time with them in the summer because they tend to be on the pre-season tour, so we can go for a lunch or for a beer together and maybe do a podcast there. But yeah, I was in the Redmen studio the other day. Look, lovely little setup that they've got. So yeah, I enjoy going on them podcasts, and Anfield Index, which I do quite a bit as well. There, Dave is the only one I really deal with there, but lots of great options for fans in terms of Liverpool, whereas some other clubs may not have that option, and I think that is mainly because Liverpool is so big that fan sites can go, make it their professional job rather than just a few guys doing it from their spare room or whatever. If you're covering a smaller club, people couldn't afford to make it their full-time job because there's just not enough fans to watch it. But Liverpool massive, and there's some absolutely massive fan sites to go with it. They're all really good.
What's the sort of next year looking like for you? Obviously, got the World Cup coming up next summer.
Yeah.
Are you aiming to be out there for that?
It would be nice. I've not had any conversations with anyone about that yet, but I've done a few England games in the international break, so maybe I'll get an international call up soon. But yeah, I think it would be a career goal of mine to cover a World Cup or a Euros or anything similar, an Olympics even. but maybe it's too early in the career just yet. But we'll see. I'd love to cover a World Cup, even if it was just the lesser ranked team, should we say, rather than the big games like England or Brazil or whatever. But hopefully, maybe that is one for in a few years' time or next year. But we'll see.
Fingers crossed. And then in terms of the sort of summer transfer window next year, have you got any sort of predictions that on certain moves you might think for Liverpool they might go
In
for?
terms of Yeah, in terms of Liverpool, I would say fans should probably be realistic with the fact that it might be, well, it will be a quieter window than this year. And I think that is obvious because of just how busy and how much money Liverpool have spent this summer. I think that the goal for next summer and the summer after is to upgrade those Van Dijk, Salah, um, the big hitters basically, because they at that point will have a year left on their deal and you know, becomes less clear cut whether they will actually extend it or not next time. They've already got their replacement for Alisson and Mamardashvili. Um, they believe that Conor Bradley can eventually, be as good as Trent, that sort of thing. But in terms of Salah and Van Dijk, I think they would have to delve into the market for that. So that could be the order of play for next summer. But it's probably too early days to start throwing names out there because I don't think even Liverpool know that yet. There's been a bit of chatter about Elise last week, but there's nothing massive happening on that just yet, other than it could be a name to keep an eye on.
And with yourself, obviously covering Liverpool, and you've got Sport Man City. How is that from a personal point of view? And how much time do you actually get to sort of, focus and enjoy your own club as well?
Not much at all because it's just so full on covering Liverpool uh, that yeah, there's most weekends Liverpool are playing on at the same time, so it's very rare. Um, I would say in terms of when I'm covering Liverpool, I have my journalist hat on, and I am very neutral and non-biased in my coverage and the way I think about things as well. Um, if I am off for the week, perhaps, and I'm in the pub watching the football, then maybe I would be less balanced and neutral. Um,
No,
and yeah, or if I'm, I enjoyed watching the Euros last summer because a lot of Liverpool fans are not very into England, for example. But I'm not from Liverpool, so I don't really have those same anti-England stances. So I was getting into that a bit. But yeah, when I'm working, I'm genuinely completely almost like put aside any allegiances, and I would say maybe 5 years ago, if my team lost, I would get quite wound up. Whereas now, I'm over it within 10 minutes.
and how do you think City are going to do this year? How do you think Pep's coming towards the end of his tenure?
Yeah, it's a weird one with City because they beat Wolves on the first day of the season, and I thought, could be a good season. Rangers look good. Haaland obviously scored, and a couple of new lads, Turkey scored as well. Um, and then they lost against Spurs and lost against Brighton. So, um, I think Liverpool and Arsenal both look stronger than City. But if City can, there's too many ifs and buts with City at this stage. Can they keep Rodri fit all season? How will Donnarumma fit in? Can Haaland start scoring again? Will Foden be back to full speed? How will Marmoush and the other wingers, Oscar Bob, Savino, Doku, step up? If all of those work in their favour, then they could definitely be in the title race, even though they've already lost a lot of ground. And then there's also questions about can John Stones stay fit? Can Ruben Diaz find his best level again? Can Gvardiol stay fit? There's too many questions for me. But if they all work in Pep's favour, then they can definitely be up there. But I do just think that Arsenal and Liverpool look stronger at this stage. So I would say Liverpool to win the league again, a bit more narrowly than last year. Then Arsenal second, City third, maybe Chelsea fourth. That's my prediction.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, all those players just listed down for City, they're all absolute megastars, let's be fair. Brilliant. There's just one couple little bits. Your top signings of the window, if you can give us a goalkeeper, a defender, a midfielder, and an attacker.
Wow. My top signings, let me think. Goalkeeper. Hmm. The only one I can think of is Donnarumma. Um,
There.
but yeah, so Donnarumma was the best keeper in the Champions League last season, so I'll go with him. Defender. Hmm. I do like the look of this, maybe a bit niche, but the lad who's replaced Kirkez at Bournemouth, thought he looked really good in terms of a pound for pound signing. But then Kirkez himself could be that man for Liverpool. So I'll go with one of them too. I'll fudge it a bit. I probably forgot players. Midfielder, I do think that maybe I think Wirtz will probably end up having a really good season and be a strong contender for Player of the Year. Although I would say too, Zubimendi looks the part, and I think he will be really good. And I also think Reinders is a good signing at City. And then striker, it's going to have to be Isak.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on when he gets back to full fitness. Obviously, he hasn't had many games, hasn't done anything really over the summer. But yeah, well, pleasure having you on, Lewis, today. Thanks,
No
thanks very
worries at
much for
all.
joining us,
Enjoyed it.
giving
Thank you very much.
giving us your insight as well into the football reporting over the summer.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. I've enjoyed it. Cheers.
That's great. And just remember to like and subscribe, everyone, and we'll be back soon with another one.